Hey guys, welcome back to another Protein Bros episode. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff Wasserman, and today we have a special guest host, Mike Thompson, aka Fast and Fit Mike. We had on an extremely awesome guest today. His name's Randy Taylor. Randy is the proud founder of the 816 Run Club. They've been going at it for years. We talked about just the evolution and the growth of running as a sport and how popular it has become, why we feel like it's gotten so popular, what is the differences between the run clubs in our area, as well as what to expect from a run club versus one that's more for performance. Randy gets into his own athletic endeavors where he talks about different ultra marathons that he's run, 100-mile long races, multiple of them, including one that would be considered the absolute highest achievement for an ultra marathon runner, which would be called Western States. Something that is just very interesting about Randy, as he has just somebody that started off as just stumbling into a running store and just asking a couple questions and signing up for a marathon like anybody else. He started in 2016, and so his story is extremely interesting. He is an incredible athlete. Absolutely listen in, lean in. Let us know what you guys think in the comments as always, and appreciate you listening. Let's get into the episode. Just to get right into things, running is something that I feel like everybody is interested in, even if they aren't interested. And I say that because everybody has experience running.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sports analysts, if you guys are familiar with Tony Kornheiser or Michael Wilbon, they have been the hosts of Pardon the Interruption.
Okay.
Which is where Pardon My Take totally stole that. But Pardon the Interruption, PTI, has been a 20-plus year running show on ESPN. And these guys are very old now, right? But they have been around for some of the coolest sports happenings in the history of sports, okay? They have watched, they've been present for lots and lots of World Series wins, lots of Super Bowls. And someone asked them, what is the most unbelievable sporting event that you've ever witnessed? And these guys are 70-plus years old and they've seen Willie Mays play baseball, okay, in real life, which is amazing. And they both said that their number one spectacle in sports they've ever seen is the 100-meter dash.
Okay.
How crazy is that, right? And they said, why the 100 meters over anything else? They said, because every single human on this earth that has ever been blessed to have legs that move have ran. And to say that you are the fastest in the entire world is just an unbelievable achievement. And so to do it in 100 meters means you are the fastest.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I don't know. I just thought that was so interesting, especially with the Olympics going on right now. When you guys watch running, what events do you like to watch the most? Spectate specifically.
Man, I mean, this Olympics, I feel like every event's been insane.
Incredible, right?
Like all of our runners are just coming from nowhere.
USA track and field is just on the map right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a blast. I really do enjoy. It's like, even though I run primarily distance stuff, it's like, I love watching the marathon, but I love the 100-meter dash just as much in a lot of ways. So, yeah, and everything in between.
Has the marathon happened yet this year?
No, it's always at the end. So they're actually doing it a little bit different this year. Normally, they run it on the last day. They're running the men's race the second to last day, and then the women's race as the last thing. So it's a pretty cool thing to kind of highlight the women's race this year. So
do you hear what they're doing in between those?
And then they're doing a public race. They're literally doing like in the evening in between those two races, they're like running like a marathon. You can just sign up like as anybody and run the exact same course.
And
how
10K.
Cool.
Yeah.
10K as well.
Yeah.
How close were you guys to just saying, screw it, I'm going to go do it?
I'm going to go.
I mean, what an awesome thing to do. Like, what a bucket list thing to do, though.
I just found out.
Dang.
Yeah.
You could have just jumped in the Paris 10K, whatever they would call it.
Yeah, I don't know what they're calling it, but yeah.
That's unbelievable. And so you can do a whole marathon with, the same route and everything.
You run the same route. Yep. Yeah.
Man.
What they're saying is there's going to be a bunch of celebrities because everybody's in Paris right now.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll have some top dogs over there.
Speaking of dogs, you think Snoop's going to do it?
That would be insane. I would love to see Snoop run a marathon, but he might do the 10K. I don't know. I
saw his 200.
Yeah, his 200.
Did you see him run a 200?
He looked pretty solid in the 200.
He's silky smooth, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like 35
60.
seconds.
That's wild.
He is literally also making the Olympics just amazing.
Did you see how much he's getting paid to be there?
Yeah.
500.
Is that real?
Foul a day.
Plus expenses?
I don't know if that's real. But
I know it's so strange. You know, I recently heard Joe Rogan talking about the
Silky
yeah,
smooth,
dude, he's
man.
got a good stride.
he does. Yeah.
No, Joe Rogan recently talked about how, like, you know, this is like when the Olympics started, of course, you know, officially, if you will, over 100 years ago, it was all for the glory of the sport, you know, and they didn't have TV back then. There wasn't any TV deals or anything. And so now that there's all these deals going into it, money wise, apparently, the athletes see none of it. And so it's like, it feels like slave labor because all these athletes are doing it. And of course they get to obviously, you know, compete for their country and all that's beautiful, but they're like, man, the billions of dollars that are in form of ad revenue now, and the athletes aren't seeing any of it.
Yeah.
So do you know any Olympic athletes yourself, and how does someone like that who has to train full time for something like that, how do they make money?
You know, well, I don't know if I know any Olympic athletes that are like over there right now, but I could relate it a lot to like ultra running and like top ultra runners like in the world, because you could have like literally the best ultra runners in the world, and it's a sport that's like starting to get traction a little bit with like sponsorships and things. But there's a handful of people that make their living in from ultra running. So to train at like literally the highest level and have to work full-time jobs and have to like do all these things and pay your own travel and stuff, and it's tough, and it just adds a whole nother level. And so somebody like myself or you know, probably Mike, of like knowing, because I mean the majority of my training and stuff I've been working, I mean I still work full time, you know, and so I think it's just one of those things that it like brings a whole nother level of respect to like those athletes in a lot of ways, because I think so many people just assume like, oh, they get to sit around all day and like they just have to go run you know, and that's it. But it's like, man, like, you know, so many of those athletes at the Olympics, or, you know, like I'm saying, top ultra runners, are like, they're literally working, training, you know, 4, 6, 8 hours a day, trying to recover, trying to sleep,
rehab,
all the stuff, man. Just eating food alone, you know, whatever it is. So like, yeah, it is crazy to think that the majority of the athletes in the majority of the sports are, you know, just normal people like us, just working and trying to train at the highest level they can.
It's unbelievable. So, and for our listeners, how long have you been competitively running yourself?
So I've been running, I mean, I ran my first marathon in 2016. So
not so long ago.
Yeah,
though.
I would not say that was competitive. I was a high school and college wrestler. So I wrestled in high school and then a few years in college, and then took a lot of time off. And then I was kind of looking at all my buddies getting a little chubby, and I was like, hey,
getting the beer belly.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, so I'm like mid-30s, and I'm like, I don't want to, like, I got to do something. And just the competitiveness in me, I think, was there. It's just I didn't know what to do with it. So decided to do something hard, and jumped into well, the thing is there was obviously internet and like resources, but they weren't as good as they are now back in 2016. So found a 16-week beginner marathon training plan online, and then looked up Kansas City Marathon, and it was 16 weeks away. So not a whole lot different than your story.
It aligned.
Like,
yeah.
You know, it just, I was like, all right, let's go.
Is that when you went into this store down in Westport on
yeah,
Broadway
in
and
that,
Westport Road?
Yeah, in those, you know, a couple weeks in, I'm like, whatever I'm wearing is not working out. So yeah, got it. You know, went into Run 816, kind of started learning a little bit more, picking their brains, you know, meeting people along the way. And yeah, just following that training plan, and ran Kansas City Marathon as my first marathon in 2016.
To go back to your wrestling, how much did you run when you were in high school and college?
Yeah, so I mean, I ran a good bit, but it was like definitely like well, in high school, I also cut a lot of weight. I'm a small guy, but I, you know, weighed about what I do now, about 130.
So you were cutting down to like 112,
Wrestling 112,
103s?
man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, 112.
The 112
my junior
class.
and senior year were both, I mean, I wrestled 112 actually all 4 years, which is kind of wild, but my weight went from probably about 112 to about 130 by my senior year. The good thing is college was 125, so I was eating like 6 meals a day and making weight.
Yeah.
So I got crazy strong in college. And I tried putting weight on, but I wasn't going to try and do like bodybuilder style. So I was just like, training hard. But yeah, so I don't know what happened.
Oh, you were just
where we
asking
went.
how often were you running back?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we ran, wrestlers run a ton. I mean, I would say on average, we're probably 3 to 6 miles a day, and then it may be more if I'm like cutting or getting extra runs in or something like that. But it's not like run training, and it's either all out because you're like racing the team on whatever, or it's like pretty chill.
One of the reasons I asked that is I think athletes are basically a melting pot of their previous experiences.
Yeah.
So like what you did in wrestling and what you did with strength has allowed you to be the athlete you are now. You know?
For sure.
So
Yeah.
Whether you played baseball, football, ran, the wrestling that you did made you who you are today.
Yeah, for sure.
So
it's definitely, I mean, and I know for sure it's played into my durability. It's played into my, because I have a ton of, I mean, even as old as I am, and I'm way less flexible than I used to be. Pretty flexible, my joints are like pretty solid.
but you can get away with it probably because you're strong.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yep.
If you're a beginner, okay, which is I think going to be a lot of people, because I think we can all. I think unless you're living under a rock, running is growing at a rate that is of trend that I have not seen in my time of following fitness, which is 17 years. And I always go back to the Anchorman quote of being like, apparently you just run for like an extended period of time. They call it jogging.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's how it feels for a lot of people, I think, right now. So if you're like you're saying, you were an athlete, you spent some years away from being competitive and from athletics in general. If you were getting into it, if you can remember back to 2016, you got started, what was your endurance like? And, how human did you feel in those moments?
Yeah, for sure. So now where A16 Run Club meets is down right by Crown Center. And if you know anything about that area, basically you're going uphill no matter which way we're going. And so we often will just cut straight up like Pershing and then hop on Gillum, which is like, I mean, it's a steep hill.
Oh, yeah.
And
about as steep as it gets
about as
in
steep
Kansas
as it gets
City,
in Kansas
that's
City.
for sure.
Yeah, and it's short, but like we'll go that way. But
Welcome to Run Club.
Short is also relative.
Yeah.
Longest hill I've ever seen in my life.
But the reason I bring that up is that I tell people all the time, I have vivid memories of like that first training cycle that I did where I couldn't run up that hill. Like I literally had to like stop and walk.
That's awesome.
Like halfway up the hill. And that was part of, in that time, it was a marker for me of like, am I improving? Like, and then I remember there's a church that sits right at the very top. And I remember the first time I made it to that church without stopping. And then, and it's now I can run I could run really fast up that hill and just keep hammering.
What's the distance that you're most proud of that you've run in your life?
Most proud of? That's a tough one. I think so I think there's a couple, and I think part of it is like maybe different goals, but running my PR marathon was really special to me. It was in Chicago 2019. I like tucked in with a bunch of females that were trying to run fast OTQ times, like Olympic trials times. And I ended up running a 240. The reason that was really special or proud at that time was like kind of the outside estimate was I might be able to run a 250 or a 245 based on what my coach was saying at that time and based on like some training stuff.
PR'd by
and so
5
I just
minutes.
like went for it. Yeah, I just went for it in a lot of ways, knowing like I'm likely blowing up, but held on. So that's a thing that like brings a lot of special memories. I
For
think.
sure. I mean,
That's
you truly
running in a
tested
pack,
yourself. Yeah.
by the way. That's
Yeah.
running in a pack.
Yeah.
You were talking about how you run faster when you're with the group opposed to when you were at Orange Theory with someone 6 treadmills down. So they pulled out the best of you.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
And that's what a run group will do too.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Rather than you running out side by yourself during COVID, you got this massive pack of people that keep you accountable and pull and push you. So you've always got someone on both sides of you, you know?
Yeah.
So stronger with numbers.
I've seen the, when I've done half marathons, which I've done 2 for our listeners, I'm not super, proud of my running prowess, but in those 2, I always there was pace setters there that I thought was cool.
Yeah.
To help with just, am I doing this right? Am I staying on course? So on and so forth. What this running community that seems to be growing exponentially, for someone who's looking to get started, is there a certain run club that makes more sense for them? Or do you feel like most run clubs have a place for you?
I would say most run clubs probably don't have a place for you necessarily, but I do think there's run clubs out there that there's enough of them out there with like different vibes, different kind of goals, different setups that there for sure is a place for anybody, no matter what you're looking for. I mean, depending on what you're what you're really looking for, it's like, you can walk into probably any run club and be okay, but it may not be the place you want to stick around.
Sure.
And I think the number one thing to kind of get at where, with the brand new runner is like, find something that you want to go do, like make that priority number one, like something that's going to keep you starting to build consistency. So if it's a group that you like, or if it's like a part of town that you like running in, or if it's, the distance that feels right, or the pace that feels right, or whatever, like find the group or the people that are just going to get you to go there every week. That's hands down number one.
I was on your website looking at, you have these 16-week programs, these 12-week programs for the Kansas City Marathon and half, and then you've got Rock the Parkway.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine when they come to you, you've got these people or this tribe that have this end goal to go to that thing. So that's what I think is really cool, is you create this environment to get all of your people to the end carrot.
Mm-hmm. There's a destination for each thing.
Rather than just arbitrarily running to have fun and yay,
yeah,
it's training.
And I think when it comes to like our setup, and really, so the crazy part is I started the A16 Run Club, like I said, about 4 years ago. And then about 3 years ago, I started coaching, run coaching, but primarily like on the furthest end of the tip the other way, which was like what I specialize in. So trail and ultra, like really long distance. And so for the majority of my coaching has been spent like fully remote, like not really going, I'm a Kansas City running coach. Like I was working with a couple other coaching groups and recruiting athletes from like all over the country who are specializing in those types of races. And it's taken me a while to merge the two in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I always had this thing where I wanted to figure out how to connect in a more kind of streamlined or like logical way the run club that we had with my coaching. And that's where like the group coaching stuff has come into play, where it's like, hey, I'm going to do this training group towards a local Kansas City race. And so if you're a brand new runner who just happens to come run at our run club, and now you want to step into a more structured training as like a beginner, because really those training groups are really centered more towards brand new runners, in some ways, or brand new to training, I guess I would say. You could be running for a couple years, but if you're just kind of just no plan,
doing it to stay in shape versus doing it to compete.
Yeah, or doing it even just socially.
Sure.
Because not everybody's necessarily doing it to stay in shape, but yeah. So like taking them, so it's like you have, okay, we're going to go from run club to this like group setting of structured training. And then if you want to take that a step further, then it's one-on-one coaching with someone like me or someone like Mike or, something like that. But yeah, so that's really what I've kind of tried to do there.
What I've found with these groups, birds of a feather fly together. So you get people together and they can't not talk about the conversation that I always have in a run group. What are you training for?
Sure.
What is your goal? Like that is, I feel like the most common conversation. And then if so-and-so says the Kansas City half, what are you doing? Oh, maybe I'll do the Kansas City half because you're a cool person and you're doing it and you're going to be here every Tuesday or Saturday, you know?
Yeah.
So you create that environment to make them want to come out because, you know, she met Susie last time and she doesn't want to let Susie down because she said she'd be out here on Saturday. So
finding like true community through it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You have all these different run clubs you mentioned, and there's going to be something out there for everyone. What's the resource that people could look to find out where all these run clubs are and where do they meet and all these things?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot of there was like a Facebook group that used to keep that up to date that was like, would list every group run and run club. I've actually been thinking that somebody needs to kind of take that on a little bit. You know,
like a menu almost.
Yeah, like, hey,
bare
like,
minimum, yeah. Just what options are out there and where do they meet? How often do they usually run? You know,
yep.
These are things that people want to know the answers to for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I would say as of right now, there's probably not a great centralized resource. It's and as much as because I'm 42 and like social media it's not natural to me. Obviously, I utilize it and like jumping in and trying my best, but like
play the game.
Yeah. But like, you know, yeah, that's really how people, you know, I mean, that's the majority like of the way people are finding the newer run clubs and groups and things like that. Which is kind of a disservice, I think, a little bit to some of the older people or people that just aren't even on, you know, social media. It's like, so I don't know.
So this is a question I have for both of you guys then. You know, have you guys ever read The Tipping Point? Mm-hmm. Right? You guys have both read The Tipping Point?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, man. I'm like, where are we at? How did this happen? You know, all I'm saying is like, I went from hearing about Running Never to all of a sudden, you know, I'm hearing more about, you know, hybrid athletes, people that had been lifting, and now all of a sudden they're running, which is what put them on my radar.
Who told you about hybrid athletes?
Oh my gosh. You know, there's been so many, but I would say that I think Nick Bare would probably be the most popular one out there right now. And he's done such a great job with it, but all of a sudden it's now just full on running versus it being the hybrid. I think they're both very popular still, but now running has this groundswell of, like I said, of something I've never seen, where there are so many people that are finding these run clubs, and from the social aspect to the dating aspect to the competitive aspect. And it's hard to navigate as a beginner which one you should belong to or which one you should go to. And if there's not a resource to figure that out, I guess you can just show up and figure it out from there. But I think there's an intimidation factor for a lot of people that wish they had some kind of resource to figure out where they could belong. And you guys are such great coaches, and Rain, I met you today, but you clearly care a lot about, you know, anybody who is genuinely interested in getting started with, whether it be beginner or competitively.
Yeah.
What do you guys think, if after reading The Tipping Point, knowing what you know, what is it that you feel like has made running become as popular as it has when we've all experienced it somewhere in our lives prior?
That's a good question. I think in some ways, I mean, I think part of the thing that is, I mean, from my experience right now, is that there's some of the younger generation really is way more like, it's cool to be healthy and into fitness and into like, you know, it's like drinking's way down, like smoking's down, like all the partying like in that way is down. And so I think it's this convergence of like that kind of thing, social media accessibility, and then trying to find healthier ways to like hang out, and socialize.
Yeah.
And so like I think the timing of all those things kind of coming together has caused this kind of explosion. I think you add into that like the running, like clothing and shoe brands, like making like cool gear, and it's just cool to like buy the coolest stuff, and they've figured out how to like get in there as well. And so it's like now it's like, you know, cool to have the best fit and have the best shoes and like show up and run a couple miles, be healthy, but at the same time you get to like chat with people or meet this cool guy or whatever. And so I think that's been part of it. But I think to your point of like, where do people find out about it? that's maybe been why it's been a challenge in the past to really grow these ideas about just the couple steps beyond that of like challenging yourself and like everybody can be a runner and like let's chase some goals and do some big things. Because when social media wasn't as big of a thing or wasn't a thing at all, it's like how does an individual, how do I or how does Mike like tell our stories and like get them out there and get people psyched about it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you have like that kind of thing where it's just now everybody can do that, and it's getting so many people excited who want to be healthy and step into some of that.
I've seen you in your camera, your 360 degree camera, which is so awesome. And you being able to capture what it looks like to feel like for those people who may not have ever been there, like that looks really cool on social media. I want to go there. So I always describe that as you're never going to buy the chips off the shelf unless you taste them. So you are giving people a taste visually of what they're going to be experiencing with social media. And so there are a lot of run groups out there that are doing a good job of that. And so when people catch wind, whoa, we have a run club over here on a Tuesday night. I wonder if it's as cool as that one. So you're talking about like there being this, what is it, the quote, like all boats rise with the tide?
Rising tides raise all ships.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. I knew you were going to know that. I feel like that's why a lot of the run groups in the Kansas City area have exploded.
Yeah. I think it's also partly just, to some degree in that same vein of like, it's like Kansas Run Club does a great job with like showing the numbers of people. Like obviously like you can look at a video like that and see that we have a ton of runners, and it takes the like, I think when people see, oh, there's 100 people there. Mm-hmm. So like
of all shapes and sizes,
shapes and sizes,
yeah, let's make that clear.
I can get lost. Now, our group is probably a little more diverse than like Kansas Run Club in some ways. They're a pretty young crowd. They're all, in that younger group.
Yeah, just young professionals,
like young professionals,
20s, early 30s,
sure.
etc.
But you can see these videos and go, oh, there's 100 people or 200 people. So it's easy for me as a brand new person that if I want to like hide, I can hide, and that takes the pressure off, I think.
Totally, yeah.
If you look at a picture,
way lower barrier of entry.
Yeah, you look at a picture and there's like 10 people and you're like, if I show up there, everyone's gonna talk to me and everyone's gonna want to know who I am, and like and I don't want to do that. So I think that's been
they're gonna ask me what I'm training for.
Well, your toes are in the water, you're wondering, am I gonna come back a second time already, right? So
yep.
I think the intimacy of a smaller group, honestly, is probably best for anybody as far as building that consistency and making them feel accepted and welcome.
For sure.
It's easy to hide in a big group, like you're saying, but it's also easy to, be forgotten and never come back. And so I think that, I don't know, I think the smaller groups might even be best for a beginner, just for them letting them know, hey, we want you to hear again.
Yeah. And we try to develop in some ways, we don't say it, but we try to get people like sucked into smaller groups within our bigger group for that very reason.
Sure.
Like, hey, if you're training, like go run with these guys and like they're doing something similar or whatever. And so get to know them,
For someone who's not done running clubs before, I want to walk through just some kind of expectations for most people.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I want to follow that up with if somebody were to, show up in the pair of old, kickers they got at the house and some lawnmowers, if you will, and they just want to get out for one run. Is there a club that you think is best for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple clubs that, if you're just going to show up for the first time and want to just go run like 2 miles and just, maybe walk run in whatever you got on, like in the garage, like I think my group is a great one for that because it is so diverse. And we definitely have walkers and stuff like that. We also put signs out and water coolers out. So like the thing we say is like, everybody's welcome. That doesn't mean you're not going to be running alone sometimes, because everybody's running different paces and different distances. And there's just no way to like sync that up to have pace groups and stuff, but you're not going to get lost if you follow the signs. So that type of thing is great. Kansas City Running Club is also like that. They're typically a little bit of an older crowd, but they do have some younger people, and they are also set up in a way to have a very wide variety of people. And so, but they're also like a bigger group, but they're not 200 people. They're like in that in between, you know? So I think those are great groups for that type of thing, just to go, do I even like run club type thing? You know, the Percheron and the Kansas Run Club, and there's a few other ones that are popping up now, like Vine Street Brewing. There's some other weeknights. I mean, Fridays on the Lawn is also another bigger, like.
Where's the lawn?
So they meet at Strang Hall over on the Kansas side. So and they're a decent sized group, but a lot of those there's a wide variety of paces, but they're very similar, like kind of younger professional for the most part. Not everybody, but like you know. And so depending on, you know, you might feel out of place if you're showing up with, you know, 15-year-old pair of shoes that you just pulled out of the closet, and you're just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It'll seem like everybody else knows what they're doing, but they don't.
I'm with you. Yeah.
You know, so so I don't know.
Should be a really low intimidation factor.
Yeah,
I feel like
for sure.
is the point we want to drive home, is that there's a place for everybody.
Yeah,
and there's no reason to be, you know, too scared to show up.
I would way rather somebody pulls a pair of shoes out of their closet that they've been carrying around forever and show up and try and run first, versus go spend $200, $300, $400, $500 on an outfit to like just and then think about running.
Well, that's like you back in 2016. Did you have a Garmin watch?
No.
Exactly.
I
And now
don't even
you've got like, what is that, like a $900 watch?
Yeah, probably.
Right?
You got a Phoenix on over there?
It's a Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
I need long battery life.
With a cool band that doesn't come with.
Right. Yeah.
man.
Well, I wear it so much I break like the bands and things, but yeah, I mean it's one of those things that like, yeah, I really wish people could go to the very basic level of like just start running in whatever capacity you have, which it should probably be a walk run strategy at first.
Nasal breathing, use your
just
perceived
super
effort.
chill.
Dude, I still can't nasal breathe when I run. I still don't understand how people do it, to be honest.
I'll talk to you about that.
I'm like, I've watched your videos, Mike. If you can't run through your nose, you're running too fast. You can't breathe through your nose.
You
You're
have to be
running
like
too fast.
Will, who has like nasal openers while he runs. Now.
I saw
I'm like,
that.
Do you have a nose ring, dude? Are you a bull?
Yeah, he has. What are those called with the when the rings like that? Luke, you know.
Luke's into that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's his type of girl. The bull ring, the door knocker.
Oh, like a septum piercing. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
That's what they're called.
My,
Septum.
My daughter has that. I have a 17-year-old daughter, so that's.
Did you tell her she has a door knocker?
I mean, yeah.
Dude, there's this groundswell we've talked about, but
Yep.
where does that come from in the sense of like the social aspect? Because it's always been there, right? There's no doubt that when you gather people, they're going to hang out and be like-minded over time, you know, but this aspect of the amount of people that are, you know, and do you guys feel like this is that this is dedicated to like the Midwest area, or has this been nationwide? Have you guys noticed this popularity, you know, this groundswell, if you will, going full, you know, coast to coast, if you will?
Yeah. And I don't want to talk the whole time if you got something to say,
Okay.
but
Mike's my co-host. You're the guest, my friend.
So there's definitely like pockets around the entire country. It's not a unique to like Midwest or Kansas City. And I think there's a few other groups or clubs, I would say, that are very, you know, and I would say this not in a bad way, but like Kansas Run Club is kind of in some ways mimicked some of these other really large social based, like social media driven clubs.
Endorphins.
Yeah, Endorphins is a great example, right?
Yeah.
And so like they have multiple locations around the country and have built up very large. I mean, in some of them they might have 400 runners, you know, so like even larger than what we have here, like Denver area and like Austin and like some of these other cities. So,
But can we agree they're not as good at looking as we are in Kansas City?
yeah, I mean, definitely not.
Right.
And so, you know, there's some really cool stuff. I mean, shoot, St. Louis has some like cool, like really, you know, big run clubs that are doing some really fun stuff. And so, yeah, I think the thing that it takes a couple people to like get that ball rolling, and really kind of put a stake in the ground and go, I'm going to try and build this. And then it's almost like if somebody does that and they're genuine and like care about it, it'll happen. Cause I think people everywhere want it, you know? But like you go to like New York or Chicago, I mean, you're a Chicago guy, like there's pretty huge groups, you know? So like that's been a thing, for quite some time. And I mean, shoot, some of the Chicago groups and you know, some of these bigger cities have had clubs forever. I mean, 40 years.
And Mike, I'm glad you touched on him being from Chicago, because Mike, you, one of our first conversations, you had mentioned how, you know, prevalent the groups that you belonged to or that you had started in Chicago were, and then you come to Kansas City and you felt like when you first got here, it was almost non-existent for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you said that you've been doing it for a while. Like if you're thinking about starting a group or being a part of a group, it doesn't start with 100 people.
No.
It starts with 3 or 4. And so, you know, like you probably had the same thing and I've had the same thing. I've been in it for a while now, almost 4 years. And so you're not going to snap your fingers, and for it to happen, it has to be consistent. It has to be, hey, we're going to be out here on Saturday, this weekend and next weekend and the following weekend. And people know that you're going to be out there and be consistent and have your water coolers out there, you know? So the other thing I thought about, we were talking about before the podcast, was COVID.
Yep.
And you said it blew up your group. And I think that sometimes distance makes the heart grow fonder. Like when you lose that, you realize how important that was to you. And so maybe that catapulted some of the, oh my gosh, this is actually a big part of my life. And so mental health is very important, and being a part of a social tribe is very important. I think we all got a dose of that during COVID, you know? So that could be why there's a little bit of a catapult in these groups.
Yeah. And you know, so initially, the thing was like I said, we launched the club in January of 2020, and we kind of rolled off of the community that was from my buddy's store, or close friend of mine, Nick and Tracy Pig. They own the store, and you know, we probably, in a unique way, we did have that like 100-person group starting as a club, but then that was January of 2020, and by March it we had to shut down. They were like, you can't gather anywhere, in any capacity. So like
inside or outside doesn't matter.
Inside or outside, it doesn't matter. And so we didn't start running again until July. And when we started running again, we were back down to like 10, 15 people, you know, that were willing to show up at that time. And that was like that weird season where they're like, you can stand in a parking lot, but you have to be like
6 feet
apart or whatever, you know? And so we were just like, well, we're just going to do whatever we can do. And then it like slowly grew and like built, and like it did kind of, you know, I think we got that boost of like what you're talking about, like where people were like missing being with people, and being outside was like one of the only ways they could do that. But I would say through all that, except for the COVID shutdown, I think in the last 4 years, we've only not ran as a club like 3 times, and all 3 times were due to like 20 below wind chill, black weather, ice on the streets, right? And that's the only time we'll cancel. With the exception of like big Kansas City races. So we don't run on Kansas City Marathon Day or Hospital Hill race day. Every other Saturday, like you don't have to know what we're doing. You can just show up and we're going to be there. And so like that's built, you know,
consistency matters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. People need to be able to rely and trust that you guys are going to be there.
Yeah, for sure.
What would you guys consider to be the number 1 most attended race within Kansas City area here?
I mean, total numbers is probably Kansas City Marathon, but it's because they have like 4 races. It's not, you know, the marathon itself isn't, I think it's only like 1,500 maybe. I don't know. I'm guessing a little bit there, but yeah. But I think they have like maybe 9,000 total runners.
Is there like a 5K, 10K,
half,
a fun run, walk, a half? You know.
Yeah, like they have all the distances, but I'm actually not super sure. Maybe Plaza 10K is probably.
Yeah, it's up there. Rock the Parkway.
Rock the Parkway's, yeah.
I did the Rock Parkway as my first one here in Kansas City. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite races. Really, it's a
Hospital Hill
didn't
in
see those
June.
hills coming in that one either. did not realize how hilly that was going to be.
Didn't notice that
Hospital Hill?
No, at
Oh,
the Rock the Parkway.
Rock the
Parkway,
Parkway, like first couple miles, gradual uphill, and then you got the backside of Loose Park is
That backside of Loose Park, man, got me.
that
I
gets
was,
everybody.
About
I was
mile
trying to, I was just trying to like not stop, and I remember being on that hill, being like, "Dear God."
Yeah, it's a fun one. So
I want to ask Luke, you're our registered Gen Zer that we can talk to. You said something earlier, Randy, that I want to touch on, and that is just for young people. It's no longer, so cool to, alcohol. The amount of people that are drinking alcohol is down. The amount of people that are, gathering in bars is down comparatively to wanting to gather and do something healthy.
Getting easier though with the non-alcoholic beers and
Agreed. No,
Yeah,
agreed.
for
There's
sure. Absolutely.
the amount of
Spirits.
non-alcoholic offerings that are out there is crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just an unbelievable market right now of mocktails or, craft mocktails in a can even that are going to be, alcohol free. So you can get together, socialize, and not have to be the person that's constantly explaining themselves while they're just drinking water.
Yep.
I think that goes into it.
I have a training question for you.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about beginners. Let's talk about like more the athletes that you coach one-on-one. When you're telling them to run a certain speed, or if you're telling them to run, are you telling them speed, pace, perceived effort? How are you coaching those people? So I think it's cool to hear what the beginners do, but let's talk about your elite, top-notch information.
Yeah.
How are you delivering that information?
So a little bit depends on what race they're like. Are they a road runner? Or are they trail and ultra? Because trail and ultra, you almost can't ever go pace.
Perceived effort?
It's always perceived effort.
Yep.
Usually.
For our listeners, what do those things mean?
So like what is
Perceived effort versus pace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So like a pace would be like, hey, go run this 8-mile run with like a 6-mile tempo in the middle at 8-minute pace. So you're trying to like look at your watch and run a specific pace or that kind of thing. Whereas perceived effort would be like, hey, you're gonna run a 8-mile run in 6-mile tempo, but you're gonna run like moderate, or moderate hard, or you might. Now you have to define what that is
Sure.
in terms of like a descriptor.
Always relative to the person.
Or you're going to run it a 7 out of 10 on like an effort scale or, that type of thing.
And that's what you're saying. So instead of it being, I'm looking at my watch constantly, and there's a very like factual number here. It is perceived effort on your own. So it's just, if I say do a 7 out of 10, it's what you think your 7 out of 10 is.
Yeah.
I think that's really good information too. Can you elaborate why on a trail versus on a road that you would give perceived effort?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many more variables that would go into that. So, like, even on a road, we have things like weather and wind and whatnot that will affect that, which is why I try to shy away from, like, pace descriptions as much as possible. But on trail and ultra, it's like, like the terrain itself is so varied that it's almost impossible to, like, run. You might even have this half mile compared to the next half mile is such different terrain that even if the weather is constant, it's like you're going to go faster or slower or whatever.
Right.
Pace-wise.
Or altitude.
Or altitude
Yeah.
or elevation gain. So many of the like, trails are whatever, like, in this one it's muddy and I'm actually descending about,
Where is that at?
that's Wyandotte County Lake.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that type of thing. So it's almost impossible to give a pace predictor on terrain like that. When it comes to trail and ultra, when it comes to like, working with my higher level athletes, more experienced athletes, I will definitely get into pace descriptors, particularly like closer to, maybe it's like the last 6 or 8 weeks towards like, half marathon or marathon, right? Because at some point we want to know, like, do you know what your goal pace is and can we run that, or can we run workouts faster than that or whatever? So we have to like dial that at a certain point. But it's like right now is a great example where I have a lot of my like more elite athletes are, today's not a great example because it's cooler weather and it was rainy and it was amazing this morning.
Awesome.
But the last couple weeks, you can't go run at normal. If I had a tempo as an example at marathon pace, They can't do that when it's 90 degrees and 80% humidity outside. You just can't. I mean, you'd be so far redlining, to try and hit that, you're just going to blow yourself up. So that's where that type of stuff is like, the variables matter a lot. And so summertime, I really shy away from it.
I think that's a good conversation to have with athletes too.
Yep.
To protect them from themselves.
Yeah.
Because those elite athletes, what you put on there, they will do, and they will turn themselves inside out to make that happen.
Exactly.
And so during hot and humid or high dew point days, you got to say, look, this is not the day to win the workout. This is the day to get the training response by doing perceived effort for this distance or duration. And so having that, like, look them in the eyes, or doing a voice, that you can do the audio now when you leave a text message. I love doing that. So you can hear my voice, rather than a text message. Give them a little bit of grace, if you will.
Yeah. And a big way I describe it too is like, if I put something on somebody's workout and I go, hey, run this at like, half marathon pace or half marathon effort if the weather is not ideal. And then they may go, well, how do, if I don't have a lot of experience, how do I know what that is? And I go, well, when you're running that, ask yourself the question, could you run at that effort for another hour or hour and a half?
That's great.
And if you can't answer that with a yes, then you're running too hard, and that comes into like the whole, you're talking about nasal breathing and easy running and where people should start. It's like, well, you should be starting at an effort that's like, you could run that for quite a long time. Most people jump in and they're running so hard that they're like, they don't know it because they don't have experience, but they're running like an 8 out of 10,
Like my 9-year-old kid when he did his first 800-meter race.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
he went out with a pack and he melted on the back end, but God love him, he finished, but he went out the first 100 like he was Usain Bolt.
It's fun to see that too in the Olympics now. You're seeing people finishing so hard and just passing 5 people in the last 100 meters easy. And you watch other people just redline. They just gassed out right there with 10 yards left. Yep. You watch people pass them. It's just wild that your body can only do so much in those moments.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. And I think, almost the coach in me, it will point out, like, as much as I love all the run clubs and like all the stuff we've been talking about, the social group type run club specifically, it is a little tricky because you'll get so many people that get into them and it's almost like, I'm going to race run club. I'm going to win like run club or whatever. And that's fine. But like what I think happens is some people show up and they go like, I hate running. This is too much. This is too hard, when they should start like way chill and just be cool with like hanging in the back.
Right. Make sure they remember that joy should be a part of this.
Man, yeah, like it's like
versus that like competitive nature of like I'm walking into a new room, I want to be the best in this room, and they're thinking they need to prove themselves. And like,
or
cool,
maybe
man.
Not even that. It's just this is what everybody else does. So like this is what running is. When if you were to talk to a coach at all, or anybody that knew anything, they're like, oh no, like the majority of your running should be pretty chill. So like just start out running whatever's really easy for you, and you should be able, in those social groups, like, can you have a conversation with the person next to you the whole time? That would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
So, but I do see a lot of them like are trending towards faster and just like, whatever.
When you guys are talking about blowing yourselves up, redlining, whatever we want to, phrase that as, do you guys have a personal story where it really hits, where you found out what your body was capable of and what it wasn't capable of?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, so
this week or
right, yeah. I mean, I've definitely destroyed myself in some like big workouts and stuff before, and I'll say this too, and I've always been, and it's probably just back to my competitive, days as a wrestler or whatever, but I've been willing to like push the limit because I want to find out where is my limit. Not everybody wants to do that. And I don't ever look down on somebody if they don't want to go there. But I just preface, like, I've hit that line many times because I've chased big goals. Probably the biggest for me was I spent about 2 years. Well, there you go. I finished that race okay-ish. That was a 100-miler in Arizona.
Sweet beard.
And yeah, I probably needed more than.
He was actually clean shaven at the start of the race.
So I ran that 100 miles in like 16 hours or so in 95 plus degree heat.
Oh my
full sun.
gosh.
So
It's a dry heat though.
yeah, but I think the hardest thing is like I was chasing. I spent a couple years I was trying to break 6 hours in the 50 mile, which was pretty fast. It's
Moving.
like a couple 3-hour marathons back to back, essentially. And the closest I got was last June. I ended up running. Well, stuff was shutting down the last couple miles, and I ran a 6:01:35. So like it was literally like what you're saying, that like 400-meter race where the guy's like 10 meters to go and just can't do it.
Everything's just breaking down on
Everything's
you.
breaking down. And so I was full like calf cramping so bad, couldn't move, like stuff's locking up.
In those situations, where do you go mentally, and when do you decide enough is enough?
Yeah. I mean, so decide enough is enough. That's a good thing.
How dark does the blood have to be?
Right. I mean, it's a
When you
dark place,
pee.
man. You have to be able to do those long runs. The only thing I've ever heard consistently from people is that you have to be able to be comfortable in that dark place.
Yeah, you do. I mean, and that's a mental and a physical dark place. The photo that he had just shown, which was finishing, that's when I finished Javelina 100. The first time I ran it, I ran it twice. Both times I was like, I mean, I was at like 110% crossing the line. And so I finished, I didn't call it, but both times I was probably doing a little bit of kidney damage with a little rhabdo, I was for sure like super dehydrated. Stuff's like not okay.
Have you ever hallucinated?
I have not.
That's a pretty big thing, right?
Yeah,
That's pretty
for
common
sure.
for
Yeah,
ultra guys.
I've definitely like been able to hold it together mentally, which is maybe partly why I can go so hard so long. But this year, like to your question of when is enough. So one of those videos. So I got into Western States 100, which is, and I haven't really talked about this a whole lot, but Western States 100 is kind of the Super Bowl of ultras. It's really hard to get in. You got to apply for a lot of years, and it's a really difficult lottery. So you got to run consecutive qualifying races every year to re-enter the lottery. And I got pulled on my third year, which is pretty lucky pull. Like it's like less than a 2% chance of getting in with the numbers. And so trained super hard. Probably the hardest training I've ever done.
How long ago was this? So we can find it on your Instagram here.
Yeah, part of it is you'll see some videos of training. I didn't post much of race because what I'm about to tell you, which is, so it's a big deal. I mean, it's a world-class race, all the elites from around the world. It is the featured 100-mile race in the United States, comparable to like UTMB in
And where is this in the Western States? I'm assuming.
so
it's
it is
west,
in
but-
California. Like it starts close to Lake Tahoe and goes towards Auburn. It is a very hot race, and so in combination with a lot of my training, I was doing a lot of afternoon runs. The race was June 29th, so it just happened. But I was running a lot of afternoon hot runs, a lot of sauna, all that kind of stuff. And we can get into a little bit what I think went wrong, but needless to say, my body was like not having it at like mile 20. Like I was having issues, cramping already, a lot of weird things were starting to happen. And for me, I run 20 to 30 mile training runs every week. So like, that's a unusual thing to go, oh, this should just be a normal, like I can do this distance every day. Why is it? What is happening? I couldn't run anymore by probably mile 27, and made it to the aid station where my wife and kids and my crew was at mile 30. And like my quads, my calves, my back, like even my fingers were like spasming, and like my calves and quads were just like
Seizing
literally
up.
seizing up. They were just going like this, like you could see it like visually.
Were you overtrained going into it then?
So it was definitely probably some overtraining stuff, which is a whole like super broad term of like, well, what does that really mean?
Right. And when you know you're doing it,
well, yeah.
and it's just
So-
such a relative thing.
Yeah, the tough part was I made it through all the bulk of my training like pretty smooth, but definitely within. So I was probably ignoring some signs there of like going a little too far, but
How many miles a week were you doing in those last couple weeks? Like in your big last.
well, I probably
4
had
weeks
like
out.
I had probably 8 to 10 weeks of like 100 plus
Yeah.
miles
Yeah.
with 10,000 plus
Vert.
vert,
Yeah.
like true like run vert around Kansas City. So like that's pretty tough to do on like hill repeats
In June.
in June. So a lot of that, a lot of really, you know,
Look at that face.
yeah, really tough.
I'm having fun. This is fun.
It's really fun. But so, you know, so the thing is, and like to tie some of that together, it's like I knew I was training more than I ever had. But I was trying to find the limit a little bit. It's a bummer that like the race went the way it did because in some ways I kind of found my limits in training, but didn't know that. And so I listened to some wise counsel from my wife and my two friends that were there to pace me, who are really accomplished ultra runners themselves. And they were just like, we just don't think it's smart. So, yeah, so I pulled out at mile 30, which, you know, is a bummer.
That experience sucks.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes you the coach you are now.
Yeah, it
you've
definitely
gone
helped
there,
me a
You've
ton,
experienced
man.
it. You can say to your athletes, look, I'm looking you in the eyes, and I've seen those eyes in the mirror before, right? And so you can have that genuine conversation with people like, you got to chill out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, this is what's going to happen come race day.
Yeah, for sure. It was some big lessons, and I think part of it's like, you know, I think I was banking on like, oh, I'll taper for 2 weeks and my body will come around, and like that's what I just kept telling myself that, and it just didn't. And it's like, you know, there's so many things that go into training of any kind at a high level, and it's not just the running, it's the rest, it's the nutrition, you know, hydration and all that. And so I think that's where it's like, oh, it's not just that I was training too much. I was probably also in a pretty massive calorie deficit for 8 weeks. I was also, because I was running and sauna and stuff so much, I couldn't stay hydrated. You know, so it's like a combination of all these things that I
Did you ever do like a sweat rate test or anything to see like how much you were sweating and how much you should like replenish it with?
I mean, I've done tests like that, but like, you know, where you weigh yourself in the morning, go out for like an hour run.
But also to know like your electrolyte
sodium,
profile,
yeah.
like what you're.
I know no, I haven't done that. I know I'm a crazy, like as small of a guy as I am, I sweat a lot, and I'm a crazy salty sweater.
What's your go-to electrolyte?
I'll use a couple different things. I like, I've been using lately Redmond Relight, which is just like, it's made by Redmond sea salt. I like Element. But I mean, I'll throw a lemon wedge and a pinch of salt in my water, you know, or that kind of thing. So, you know, I'll use it, but yeah, I mean, I know all the stuff of like what to do. It's just at some point it's almost impossible.
Maybe a good way to phrase it is, if you had an athlete, what would you relay to them to make sure that they don't go into that same situation?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Were you following a program? Were you more? You know, I got time in the afternoon. I'm just going to throw it in,
Well,
you know?
So here's the other funny piece to this, which I like to tell myself it wasn't a factor, but it probably was this is also the first race I've trained for in probably 5 years where I didn't have a coach. And so I definitely had a plan, and I had a few people looking in on my training, but nobody was prescribing training on a day-to-day and going like, how are you? That's important. I think that's one of the biggest values of a coach is like, you know, it's like plans are plans, but like somebody checking in and somebody
Dude,
really being there.
Coach protects you from you.
Yeah.
Coach protects you. Actually, when you get to your level, they just make sure that you don't overdo it a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm prone to do that. And sometimes I push because like, I think that's the tricky part is that sometimes I just want to say like, is there more to a degree? But I think, you know, for me as a coach, I got to really know my athletes and know because I have some athletes that they're okay with blowing up and having a bad race, and it's not going to like destroy them, you know, even if they trained 8 months for it. And there's some that it will.
Right.
And so you kind of have to know
who's more resilient.
Yeah, know the person and know what their goals are. You know, for me, I'm willing to risk the races because I want to find the limit, but that's, you know, not everybody wants to or needs to go there. So,
question: favorite run book, and then favorite podcast for running.
That's tough, man. Favorite run book. I'm gonna say this is kind of a sideways thing because it's not necessarily a run book. But it's written by a runner and who talks about some running stuff. But Do Hard Things by Steve Magnus.
Yeah.
And so
Texas guy.
Yeah,
they have a podcast too, actually.
And so, you know, there's a ton of really good.
Do you do hard things? Says the guy that just turned himself inside out.
But I think that's also relative for everybody. Like, I definitely don't think everybody should do like what I do, you know? And so I think everybody needs to define what their hard thing is and like go after that. I'm a big, like, and for some people that might be showing up at a run club for the first time and running 2 miles. That's awesome. Could literally be the hardest thing in the world to them. But I'm a big cheerleader for anybody that's going to go, here's my hard thing. Like I'm going to go for it. It doesn't have to be, and again, you know, it's like, I think that is a little bit of the downside of like social media and stuff to a degree is like, you see people like me, like I'm a little bit hesitant to post a lot of what I do because I don't want people thinking, well, I'm not cool until I do that.
Yeah,
you know?
The comparison game's
like,
never going to be a good thing.
Yeah, it's never, man. And so it is, you know, it's a tough thing. Running podcast is also tough because I get into a lot of like more sciencey and like deep training type stuff,
which is awesome. Yeah, nothing you need to apologize for.
But like the Norwegian double threshold method.
This isn't
like that.
The question isn't what should other people listen to. What do you really geek out on? Yeah, what's your favorite?
But I mean, stuff that I think.
Well, let me change the subject or question then.
Yeah.
What really fascinates you right now? Like, what are you really like loving hearing or implementing with your athletes? It's like, look, I stumbled upon this like 6 months ago. I've been putting blank into my athletes or my own programming.
Yeah, that's a good one. Man, I don't know if I have a good answer to that. I think, and the reason I don't is I am such a proponent and believer in fundamentals that I almost find it hard to even get past that in a lot of ways.
Just keep stacking bricks.
Yeah, stacking bricks. Now, there's a lot of ways we can change that, you know. I think the thing that I'm probably more interested in and implementing is like almost non-related, run-related specifically, but more the psychology behind certain things and like how to keep people motivated, how to get people to believe they can do more than what they think they can. How do I have conversations with my athletes to like help them go that way? How do I, you know, talk to the run club to get people like amped, you know? So like I'm way more on that because I think the challenge is that like for the majority of the people out there, probably 90% of people, they just need to get to where they can run 4 or 5 days a week in any capacity,
right?
And like not worry about all the noise, and they're going to improve as a runner. But so many things get like put in front of that to a degree that like makes it really difficult to get that ball rolling.
To get to that consistency level that you're
Yeah.
talking about. And I think I want to make sure I make a point of this, because I think this is true also on the lifting weights, fitness side of things. When people are doing bodybuilding and so forth, athletes are just so quick to want to look for some kind of edge or some kind of a, unlocked secret that they didn't know about. And, so many of the coaches and trainers, whether it be, I'm assuming, running or bodybuilding and any form of fitness, whether it's, whatever hobby you want to get into fitness wise, there's just going to be a tremendous amount of fundamental things that you're talking about. From the very beginning, you just have to get good at the hard work before you start seeking these ways to make the work easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's like, the wanting that edge or that easy button is so much of what, and again, with social media, it's like now every brand that claims to have the easy button or whatever is like, just in your face nonstop. That's a lot of the noise that I have to probably, and it kind of gets frustrating as a coach, because I'm like, I have to spend half of my time talking to you about things that should not be worried about right now.
Different
or
gadgets.
Whatever the gadget or whatever. And not to talk bad about supplements at all, because there's definitely a place for it. But if you're brand new to running, we don't need to worry about necessarily what 5 supplements you should take or whatever to make it better.
100%,
And but that's the reality of what happens.
It makes it so tough for us as a company when we're partnering with athletes or trainers in the area, because it's such a dichotomy of, hey, I really hesitate to want to recommend supplements at all because of the avalanche of what comes when you open that Pandora's box.
Yep.
And so the amount of trainers and coaches that we've talked to that are like, man, I don't even want to breach that subject, because I have to spend most of my time talking people down from thinking they need to buy 10 things, when it's like, no, just run 10 miles and then do that 10 times and then come talk to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's unfortunate that there is also the other side of the coin, where when people invest in themselves and they buy a supplement or they buy a new pair of shoes, et cetera, it gives them a little more buy-in. And so there is this beautiful, marriage between the two that's different for everybody. But when you invest in yourself, you want to stick with it longer. You know what I mean? And so that's not true for everybody, but there is value there, but it's not nearly the amount of value as the consistency we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the best thing, which is what I try to spend a lot of my time doing, is just going hey, let's put this in its right place and figure out okay, we don't need to not talk about that, but let's talk about the order of priority that we should be,
100%,
and I think that's just really important to put. So when it comes to new but you can get into the weeds with new types of training and things like that. You mentioned double threshold or whatever. The number of times I've been asked about that, and I'm like the level that you have to be, the volume alone that you need to be able to run, not just run volume, but workout, intensity volume, to be able to handle a workout like that and have improvement is so high that
you played Kipchoge, who's running 120 to 150 miles a week. He could get away with that because he could do 20 to 30 miles of speed or tempo, right?
Yep.
Where the average runner who's running 30 miles per week, you only get allowed, if we're doing the 80-20 principle, 5
miles,
maybe 7. So that's maybe 2 speed days. And so the double thresholds are Tuesday morning, Tuesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday night, and that's too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you get into stuff like that, it's the same type of thing. 'Cause I'm just man, this magic structure is not going to make a difference when we can't follow the basic run structure has been around for quite a long time. And when you look at how the pros are training, it's still pretty much the same.
And I think that holds true with almost every sport out there.
Yeah.
And so it's just guys, there is not this unbelievable technology. There's no new reinvention of the wheel. There is no cutting edge for the most part, and you have to be extremely, I would say, consistent before you can see how 1% difference makes you feel when you have those different tools.
Exactly.
They absolutely make a difference. It's just very hard to tell them when you're still trying to figure out how consistent you're going to be or how disciplined you're going to be in the sport.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the cyclist who's like, 20 pounds overweight, but he's spending $10,000 trying to take a pound off his bike. And you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense, right?
There's just way too much of that going around, man.
Yeah, it's just,
I'm with you.
So
we, one of the most consistent conversations, and I was in a final interview with a gal last night here at our office, and she's like, what do you think is the most common conversation that you have in the store? And I said, you know what? This will probably surprise you. It's usually trying to talk people out of buying things. And she's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. It's also a really fast way to make sure that the customer truly knows that you have their best interest and helps build trust. But truly what happens so common is, supplements is like this world where most people ask, does it work? All the time. It's like the most funny conversation that you can have. It's like, the by and large, the majority of people are just wondering, does that supplement really work?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, of course. Just what was your expectation for what it working looks like? Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a tool for the job. And so the amount of times that people will come in and they're looking for, let's say, that $10,000 bike that we're talking about. And we're like, hey, do you have a helmet? Right. Do you have shoes? Do you have the most fundamental basic stuff? And do you know why those things are so important and how you use them is so important before you buy the flashy new toy? My gosh, there's so many other things that you're going to need foundationally first. And so that is the most common conversation. I'm assuming also as a coach with someone getting into it and wanting to take that next step. And you're like, hey, come for 3 weeks and then we'll have this conversation. You know what I mean?
So we were talking about the group coaching sessions I do, towards specific races. And the first session, I used to have a lot more Q&A, but because it would get derailed by supplements, strength training, all these things that are all additive to running, but not the main,
not foundational.
Mm-hmm. I kind of changed the way I do stuff a little bit, but it's my number one thing. I'm are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? And are you eating a balanced diet? With enough calories.
Well, I certainly don't want to have to change any of my own habits.
Right. And it's you shouldn't be, again, I hate to say it, but if you're not doing those 3 things and trying to optimize those, you probably shouldn't walk into a store like this because they're not going to help in the way that you probably want them to.
Or need them to.
Or need them to.
And I think you get to a certain spot where people will, as long as they were consistent with those things first, we can have that conversation. But unfortunately, we have the phrase that we use often in our stores for pay now or pay later. It's I could sell you this and then you're going to hit a new wall and there's not going to be another supplement to buy. I'm just going to tell you got to get better sleep. You got to eat, you got to eat more, So it's a fun dichotomy, but let's say somebody is being consistent and they've been consistent for, let's say, a month and they're just looking to get past, they've gotten their newbie gains, if you will.
Yeah.
And they're excited about things and they just want to take it to the next step. What would be some foundational supplements that you would recommend to somebody who is taking it serious?
I mean, that's a good question. Everybody's vitamin D deficient. So it's starting with something like that, is a big thing. Magnesium.
How does that benefit a runner?
I think just in general needing within a solid range of vitamin D, it just helps overall feeling better.
Wellness.
Wellness. Yeah. Protein is another big thing that in everything that I've studied, hardly anybody, especially if you're training any capacity, is eating enough protein. Protein is a big thing. That's probably one of the only things that I consistently, I would say, supplement with. There's definitely some other things you could get into, but and then I don't know if we're calling electrolytes and stuff like that supplements, but
no, for sure.
Some electrolytes and things. I think again, some of the things that that I've seen is 75 hard stuff where it's drinking a gallon plus of water a day, but people don't understand hydration and they're dehydrating themselves because they're drinking just a crap ton of plain water and stuff like that. So, I mean, those are the like starting points for me. I think the other thing is like, you know, we talked about it. Right? I can't remember the other guy, Thatcher. Yeah. So we were talking about how he wants to start carrying maybe some sport nutrition or something at some point, or like would like to have, you know, some sport nutrition in the stores, because like carbohydrates is like, I don't know if we'd call it a supplement.
Is that
like,
a specific brand?
Just
Sport nutrition, you're saying?
No. But just having like the gels and like, you know, like
hammer gels. We used to carry those all the time. There's
there's a
honey
lot of
stingers, or
there's a lot of like really.
We used to sell Accelerate back in the day, if you know that one. But
They had aminos in that as well.
we've always carried honestly a ton of powdered carbohydrates, but maybe not ones that were marketed and targeted towards the running community.
Yep.
But yeah, powdered carbs for sure, a huge supplement and something that people could absolutely benefit from.
For sure. So I think those are, I mean, again, sticking to basics. And this may be a thing where it's like, I don't know, like I know a lot of people that take a lot of other things. But I also don't know if I've seen them consistent enough at all those base level things to go, is that improving or is that not improving? If that makes sense.
No, yeah, it's hard to respect, I think, anybody who is spending extra money or time on auxiliary items when they're not doing the basics correct.
Yeah.
And that's just from, I'm assuming, like a high-level athlete's mind. You're going to be looking at, okay, if your goal is to get to this end game, there's a really straight line that you could do, or you could keep doing it the really squiggly line way that you're doing it. And it's hard to watch it and be like, wow, you keep wondering why you're not hitting these PRs, but I just keep watching you, go to bed at 2 a.m. and wake up at 6.
Yeah. So
it's hard to find, So it's some people, they would rather continue, to do anything they can besides change their own behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think everybody's guilty about it in some aspect of their life.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
I want to talk about some things that bring you guys joy, and that is running first and foremost. I think should be fun. And I think that a lot of people don't see it as that. And I think that these run clubs are a great way of showing that it can be a lot of fun. But I want to talk about just like when you're with yourself on these runs, tell me the most beautiful place you've taken a run before.
Most beautiful place, man. I've ran in a lot of really beautiful places.
You started off with Tahoe already, and I was like, man, that's a place I've never been, but gosh, what a beautiful place.
Man, it is an amazing place. And as much as I was struggling in that beginning of that race, because I ended up pulling out, but like, that was hands down probably one of the most beautiful mountain runs I've ever done. But I also love the desert. I've talked about Javelina that I've ran a couple times. I've ran a couple other races down in like Arizona area, and like there's just something magical about like sunrise in the desert, and it's just the big saguaro cactus and like whatever. It's just like so amazing.
Land of the rising sun.
Man, it's just like amazing. That is Flagstaff. I've got some close friends, so I get out there and train quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to go? I mean, I don't know if what I was doing there would be called a run. My friend called it a run. She's a big mountain runner. But I've ran in some really, really beautiful places, but like, dude, I can be running like down Trolley Trail here in the city, and if the sunrise is coming up, and like it's almost the same for me in some ways, So
I would expand on that. Like I've had my athletes do, I call them awe moments. Like within each of your run, try to find that beautiful butterfly.
Yeah.
So wherever you're on the Trolley Trail, right next to the river, running on whatever street, is it a cool flower? Is it a sunrise? Is it like somebody helping somebody else cross the road, like an awe, moment? In those awe moments, there was actually a really cool National Geographic video. They took veterans up into the Arctic Circle, and they tried to get them to experience those awe moments, and it helped with lower their cortisol levels. And so I think if people can look for those and not just go for a run and but like try to look for your awe moment, it can kind of open up your eyes to new things.
Yeah, for sure.
Agreed, man. You guys, I really enjoyed this conversation. I want you guys to know I feel inspired. I feel like I need to run longer than 12 minutes based on what I did yesterday. But I want to know, for somebody who is getting started, is there a certain place for them to go as far as getting the right shoes that you guys truly enjoy? Because I feel like if there's anything, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's just a great place to start, is making sure you have shoes that make you feel comfortable running.
Yeah, good shoes is definitely, it's going to help in so many ways. It's going to help your feet feel better. It's going to help, that's the problem about pulling a 15-year-old pair of shoes is like foam's all degraded, and it's like, you're likely to potentially hurt yourself or at least beat yourself up more than you otherwise would. I mean, I will say this, we have some great running stores around town. I mean, Running Well is like one of the only like locally owned running stores. And I really do like them. I wish we had more like, mom
and pop style
running stores, around town.
It's hard to compete against the big dogs, man.
Yeah. Obviously Fleet Feet, next door here is like, they have a huge selection, but I think that's one thing that's almost going the other direction in terms of like service, and that kind of thing in a lot of ways. I do think Running Well is like taking steps to like connect to the community and connect to like these run clubs and the people that are in the community and stuff like that. So I want to see more of that.
Yeah. Support who are supporting the sport.
Yep. So, so I mean, that's probably where to go. I mean, I definitely recommend for anybody, and obviously some people are not in Kansas City, is like find somebody who knows knows about running and like what shoes might work well with your feet. You can get, most quality run stores are going to do some form of assessment, watch you walk or whatever, and like, get you fitted. But at the end of the day, that's the tough thing is like there's so many, every brand out there. If you're in a run specialty store, they're probably a quality shoe. But everybody's feet are different and everybody moves different. So it's like,
is that something someone could hire you to help them do?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like in some ways it's like go with your gut and go, man, does this shoe feel good? Like, does it feel good on my feet out of the box? I think the days of like, oh, I got to break this shoe in, or I'm not going to say they're over, but they're kind of over. And so if it doesn't feel good, like right out, box, then it's probably not the right shoe for you.
Can I talk about the contrast of what you just said?
Yeah.
Because if you can't feel it, how do you know it's good for you? So there's so many people buying shoes online
yep.
without trying them
Yep.
on because they look cool or they like the color or they want it to go with their wardrobe.
Yep.
That's why you got to go to the
This
store,
is what their friend
a
uses,
local store.
whatever. Yeah.
Got to go there to try them on. Like,
Yeah.
Otherwise, how do you know?
Mike helped me buy my shoes. Bought 2 pair.
Yeah.
I ran in the Ultras yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Man, my shins hurt the next day.
Usually that would, with the zero drop, would usually hurt your calves.
Oh,
your
my
Achilles.
calves are there all the time.
Yeah.
I walk on my toes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'm just straightening those at all times.
He's a toe walker.
That's right.
He's a toe walker.
What song is that, Mike?
Watching girls go by. my.
I got then I got those Sauconys, which I been embarrassing myself my whole life.
The
saying
Triumphs.
Saucony.
Saucony.
My whole life, everybody's just like looking at me like, man.
I think Saucony is one of those brands that like everywhere else in the world probably pronounces it Saucony or something like that. It's like we say Nike here, but everybody else says Nike like everywhere else in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the name of the actual Greek, mythology?
I don't know.
Guy was it
but,
Nike the whole time?
I think it's just the way other languages would pronounce it. So
Sure.
who knows? So you're probably right, and we're actually just wrong. But yeah.
My last question I have for you, it's one we ask everybody that's a guest on our podcast, and that is, we are big barbecue lovers in this city.
Yeah.
You may or may not be, but if you have people coming in town to hang out with you, where are you taking them?
Yeah.
You get one
yeah.
spot.
It's tough because I feel like I listened to the podcast with Mike and he said Q39, I believe.
I did.
And that's probably, if I'm bringing people into town, that's probably the place I would also go. I'm like a big
Safe.
fan. It's
Very
safe.
safe.
I'm like
They're
hole in the
consistent as
wall,
hell. Yeah.
like type I'm an LC's or like that type of spot. But Q39 is probably it's great every time.
That's right. So, yeah, I agree, man. It's in
Can't wear your jorts there.
No.
the answer is true though. I mean, like it's tough to poke a hole in it, but it also doesn't show like I could say there's a whole lot of phenomenal barbecue that doesn't get the same kind of love just because of what we were talking about. It might be a hole in the wall. It might be off the beaten road.
Yep.
Whatever. But that also shows like how good it is everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of really good barbecue. So
if you've inspired some of our listeners today, where can they help us where they can find you, please?
Yeah. So, website, which there's a couple ways to get there, but a16runclub.com. We'll get you there. And then the Instagram, A16 Run Club, on Instagram. My personal Instagram is coach_RWT. And so if you want to see stuff about the Run Club, and or me and my coaching, you can get to it from any of those ways. They kind of all connect to a degree. So
very cool, man. We really appreciate your time, and really enjoyed getting to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, man.